Welcome to Silicon Valley After Dark AI Edition. My name is Eric Nilsson, and we have Rajesh Kadam. And today is April 24th. It's the end of the week. It's Friday After Dark. How's it going, Rajesh?
Very good, Eric. How are you?
I'm doing great. Let's get into what actually matters this week, because the model race is happening. It's not slowing down. It's actually accelerating.
I think there's a lot of good developments as usual, I think, in AI land. So I think we have a few things to talk about.
So first thing, let's talk about new DeepSeek model, right?
Yeah, I think this week there were multiple models launched. I think OpenAI 5.5, right? I think, yeah. So new model from OpenAI, GPT 5.5, I mean, and then a new model from DeepSeek. Another one from Qwen, which is Alibaba, right? So the most interesting thing was DeepSeek's pricing was super competitive, is what I noticed actually. Just input-output tokens on the API is like super compelling. So I think they continue to. I think it is kind of common knowledge, if you will, that. A lot of folks use Chinese models, right? On the open source side, definitely Chinese models are leading, and even in terms of token output throughput, like what founders and devs are using is the Chinese models because they're so cheap. So and the quality is very good. So yeah, that's kind of what I see in terms of models this week, right? But in terms of hype, I don't know about hype, but in terms of attention, I think a lot of the center of gravity in terms of the AI story is moving upstream into sort of infrastructure and power and data centers and things like that.
Well, let's just talk about the model. I think China set the bar here, where they're just introducing their new model, coming in with new pricing, lowest cost pricing. That's very typical of what China does.
Right.
They have a government that funds things, right? And then they try to put everybody else out of business in price. Now, it's an arms race. It's really fast. So whether that's going to work or not is, still to be determined.
TBD,
but they're certainly going to put some price pressure on. Good enough is good enough. We're going to be the low cost price leader, and let's release that. GPT 5.5 from OpenAI.
I didn't try GPT 5.5 yet, but I did try the Qwen models. The Qwen's latest release, and what I noticed is, of course, compatible in terms of benchmarks, obviously, right? That's why these things are, even people look at it, even DeepSeek, for example. So I don't know if I buy the Chinese analogy, maybe the Japanese analogy is more appropriate, meaning when Toyota first started competing with the US automakers, right? I believe they were not only cheaper, but of much higher quality. So higher quality at a lower price was a total sort of game changer, right? And I think DeepSeek, definitely in terms of flagship models, they continue to be competitive. But what I did notice, again, benchmarks is one thing, but I have been trying to adopt OpenClaw-like features in Claude last week or two, and I tried to replicate that with Qwen, and Qwen said, hey, I can't do it. I'm not allowed to, and maybe it's explicitly, not programmed, so to speak, at this point. But I think that is a big unlock, actually, this sort of OpenClaw style methodology, wherein it's able to access your email, Slack, text messages, file system, right? It really, I think unlocks a new level of productivity for the user. So,
well, I'll come back to OpenAI and their announcement of the model 5.5, right? And I think their approach is just iterative, right? Their iterative new releases, not revolution, but understated value, right? They're going to keep moving that forward.
Right.
So OpenAI is just like, hey, we're the market leader. We've got, the models that, they got the customer base that's using their models. And so they're better reasoning and stability, right? Better reasoning stability is what they're focusing on. Fewer hallucinations, stronger multi-model consistency. This suggests that OpenAI is optimizing for enterprise reliability, right? So I feel that's just not just for demos and cool things, but actually what's actually happening with their strategy as market leader going into the enterprise. Right? So interesting to see. Not trying to wow you on price. Obviously China with DeepSeek was trying to go after price, right? Where GPT GPT OpenAI 5.5 was really going after reliability, enterprise reliability, and getting a cadence of the train model where they're just going to be releasing new models consistently, not changing everything. And that's typical of a market leader, right? They're not trying to break everything. They're trying to move it forward in a reliable way.
Right. I mean, I think it's interesting that you mentioned the enterprise point, but really, I think the perception right now is that Anthropic is leading on the B2B side, right? Like on the enterprise side with usage. But obviously, OpenAI is working hard, I'm sure, in trying to make sure that they remain relevant on the enterprise front. I think in terms of market leadership and continuous iteration, I believe DeepSeek has had some delays in its model, actually, in its launch, and it's partly probably because they don't have as much compute availability despite the government backing. But I mean, with all these bans on NVIDIA chips going there, and also on the tooling, of course, right, on ASML tooling, and even anyway, there's some announcements there we should talk about, actually, on what's happening on, some folks in the industry lobbying now for saying, hey, we shouldn't be sending even tooling, some memory tooling to China. So that's kind of an interesting development too. But yeah.
And then Qwen, which is really Alibaba, introduced their 3.6 model. And again, it's an economic play. They're going after the enterprise stack, but both Alibaba as well as DeepSeek from China are going after the economics of the models, right?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think obviously we are moving into the inference sort of cycle, part of the AI wave, right? Like, so a lot of it used to be training in the beginning in the last couple of years. Now, obviously, as usage is sort of skyrocketing, people are actually using the focus will now come into, okay, what does it cost really to run these things, on a per token basis or on a per action basis for a user, and so on and so forth. And even me, when I look at my Cloud Code usage, if I'm working on some heavy task, which I was earlier this week, I got to track and say, okay, I hope I'm okay on my daily limits, for example, or on my weekly limits, because I'm worried that if I top off, if it goes over, then I can't finish my task on the deadline, right? So I think so. This is on the user side, example on the user side, and obviously for Anthropic or OpenAI, they are watching to see, hey, in terms of inference costs, are we able to serve all these requests from users in a cost-efficient way, right? Like, I mean, that's definitely the case, right? And of course, both of them continue to raise money to fund this, I mean, I'm seeing some staggering numbers on the valuation.
Well, the other thing I think China is doing, which is interesting, and this is a strategic thing, which, they're introducing their new models to support this, is they're actually embedding AI throughout their entire economy. So I think their long-term strategy is to make sure they're embedding AI all in their whole economy, and they're able to do that because they're a planned economy, right? They're obviously, communist-driven planned economy, and therefore lowering the cost of AI to build into their manufacturing systems and everything that they're using it for. They're going to be able to do that in what they look at as, I just need a model that's good enough and low cost, because they're very conscious of cost, because they're producing things, right? And they're putting them on ships and delivering them to America, right? Yeah. So they do have to pay attention to real world costs, because it's not just higher end function. I think they're economically going to build it into their entire ecosystem much faster than maybe the West is, because the West doesn't have levers to just say they're going to do it. So that's interesting.
I don't know if I fully agree, Eric. Look, Jensen points this out, that China has more than 50% of the world's researchers, right? AI researchers in China, right? Geographically, right? And of course, worldwide, like the AI researchers, a lot of them are Chinese. Who is paying for them? What do you mean?
Who's paying for those researchers? The government. Right? Their economic model is a planned economy.
Yeah. It is definitely a planned economy. It's a plain play. It's definitely a planned economy. But I think it's important to acknowledge that, and it's not just me pointing this out. I think Jensen mentioned it in his Dwarkesh podcast, that DeepSeek, the DeepSeek paper and the model when they released it last year, about the same time last year, was actually a net new contribution to AI, like AI developments, right? Like so. I don't know if I would frame this as sort of low cost, good enough kind of thing. No, actually, right? Like DeepSeek absolutely rocked the boat when they launched.
Low cost.
Yeah. Well, of course, as a
stupid but low cost, sure.
No, not stupid at all.
Yeah, pretty stupid.
No,
not as smart as the AI models they were coming with, but it was good enough.
Yeah, I mean, of course, the question of what kind of distillation happened? Did they ping right? Like, I mean, the whole notion of distillation. I mean, that's an open question. I don't know enough about that, right? But I think these models are competitive from a quality standpoint, but now here's the angle, and we may have spoken about this in our previous sort of sessions, but the strategy here for China might be that, hey, we are going to commoditize the model layer, right? Mm-hmm. And we are experts in hardware, right?
Right.
We are rather like we are experts in making things.
I agree.
Yeah, right. Like so we'll completely beat United States, and
they're less about making money on AI, right?
On models, rather.
And AI, how do they make their money? Making things and shipping them. So they want AI embedded in everything they're building,
right.
But they're planning this out to go, look, we need a good enough AI to enable our industry and plug this in everywhere and keep it such a low cost that when it's plugged into a refrigerator or whatever else they're building, that it's not a big percentage of, and it's low enough cost that it doesn't matter how much token usage you have, because every refrigerator is going to be smart.
Right.
And so that's what I think they're trying to play that out.
I see. So you're really, I think what you're pointing out or pointing to is that, hey, if we are going to embed this in every device,
that's right.
2 years from now,
right.
We got to think about economics, and we're going to build things accordingly.
Yes,
essentially.
A refrigerator doesn't have to be a rocket science.
Right.
It needs to know what the temperature of the food needs to be, and how to order your food off the internet. Right.
Yeah.
So I think that's where they're headed.
So, but Eric, I mean, I think then we need to distinguish between sort of large language models and SLMs, like small language models, right?
That's right.
So a thing that's sitting within a refrigerator is more like an on the edge model, right? Which is an SLM on the edge kind of model.
Right.
So which is going to have it's going to be an expert at doing things in the refrigerator.
Right. and Jensen Huang's not going to like this, because Jensen Huang is about building bigger GPUs, bigger, so that you can have smarter and smarter models. And I think to some degree the edge doesn't need high-end big GPUs. Neither does your refrigerator. Neither does your all the other consumables that you get from China. So I have a feeling that there's going to be the AI industry in the Western hemisphere that is looking at high-value intelligence for curing cancer, doing big things that are smart, and then you're going to have AI models that are not necessarily edge, but they're just AI models that are economically very efficient. Right?
Interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, I again, like, it's a little bit of speculation, but even when we have thousands and millions of robots and whatever things, doing DoorDash, things like that, whatever. All of those have to connect to a central server, computing resources, intelligence. I mean, so the way this is going to play out, right, like, is actually an ensemble of models, right?
Sure. Yeah, we're just talking about the models that got released this week from China.
Right.
Were very specific to low cost.
But low cost, general purpose large language
general
models.
Purpose, right. Yeah, but not, not the latest, greatest.
Interesting. We'll have to test it more, right? For me to, otherwise, I mean,
and every week is a new set of some things, but this is what came out this week, so sure, why not?
Right.
Other things that are happening, industry moves that actually matter, XAI and the Cursor deal. They announced that today. There's been
that has been earlier this week, and that's a super interesting deal, because it was a little bit of a surprise. I mean, I did not sort of expect that at all. So what the deal is, Cursor, as most of our viewers know, is a AI coding assistant, right? And of course, XAI is Elon Musk's project around AI. Now, the way this works is Cursor is, of course, in the application layer, right? It's a coding agent, and coding is the first sort of huge use case, big use case that has succeeded with AI. And xAI, he has access to hundreds and thousands of GPUs. They set up the first data center in Memphis and so on and so forth, right? So the Colossus data center, right? So they have the compute. Now Cursor, as an application layer company, is dependent on models. It doesn't have its own models, nor does it have its own compute, right?
Right.
So they started with Anthropic and OpenAI on the model front. As they have grown, as their revenue has like completely skyrocketed, they are beginning to, of course, there's IP in terms of an ensemble of models and what they're routing, etc. But they're also relying, I think, on some of the Chinese models, building their own model infra, in fact, right? Talking about cost, right? So to remove their dependence on these large model players like Anthropic or OpenAI, right? But they also need access to compute, actually, right? And compute is expensive. So this deal, and this deal is interesting, where Elon Musk is buying an option, quote unquote, an option to buy them for $60 billion by the end of the year. Mm-hmm. Okay, that's one part of the deal. The second part of the deal is if he doesn't buy them by the end of the year for $60 billion, they get $10 billion. They, meaning Cursor, gets $10 billion for the work they put in, like in working with him on this. So that's the deal. So it's like really a marriage of sort of two folks who need each other, right? Like, because xAI doesn't have a killer use case actually that's sitting on top of it, except of course Twitter. But you know, Twitter is a consumer application, really. So yeah, so this makes a lot of sense, you know.
Yeah, it makes sense. I see that, right? Like one side brings products and users, which is Cursor,
right,
and the other one brings, you know, a bunch of hardware and data center infrastructure, right? And I can see a lot of the service providers needing to do these deals over time, right? Because again, there's going to be 5 or 6 or 7 winners of big compute infrastructures, and I'm even wondering if Elon's got enough longevity to stay in the game, right? You know,
I mean, I think the things going for him is, of course, those you know, the whole data center thing about data centers in space, if that actually is a real thing, and you know, he might be able to, you know, if he can pull it off. And there's evidence that he definitely has he owns some part of that infra with SpaceX, etc. So obviously cannot completely write it off, but also seems like a little bit of a pie in the sky at the moment. So
and if you really look at Microsoft's doing, it has GitHub, they have Copilot, maybe they do a deal with OpenAI, right? And now you have OpenAI that has massive amounts of GPU resources, and you have Microsoft that has, you know, an AI and it has services, GitHub, and you put together a competitive offering in the developer space.
Right. I see what you mean. So like Microsoft has the applications, right?
Sure.
So they can use all their hyperscaler compute actually for their own purposes. There's enough to do there, right? Yeah, you're right. I mean,
and then we'll pay attention to what's happening in this industry. Certainly, xAI and Cursor deal was announced this week, and you know, that's one of these, and we expect to see more over the next coming months. Right?
I think so. There was another deal actually today that just came out. I was reading about it earlier this afternoon. Was around Cohere, 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 which is a AI startup out of Canada. They were in the reckoning about a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, right? Like, but they haven't like kind of gained traction at all. But it turns out their game is around sovereign AI actually, and so they seem to have backing from the Canadian government, and they merged or they bought a similar entity, somebody similar to them out of Germany. And the German government also is apparently sort of interested in making this deal happen. So those two entities are coming together, and they're getting a fresh round of funding as well from the guys who funded that German entity. So I don't remember the name of that German entity, but the spin there is around sovereign AI. So Canada or Germany not having to depend on US-based model providers. Which would be a sovereign risk kind of thing, which is interesting angle for sure. So that's another deal that we're seeing, but I certainly expect consolidation even, right? Like, or like, I mean, what we are seeing happening with Figma. I think we spoke about Figma in our last session, right? Sure, like an episode, and I think now if Claude design, right? The design aspect now continues to, for example, gain traction. People use for making their websites or decks, etc.
Right.
If people use Anthropic or Claude, what happens to Canva or Figma, right? Like, are they just going to get bought over? What happens to Adobe, right?
Yeah.
These are, I mean, that's the kind of deal flow activity potentially that might come up maybe 6 to 12 months from now.
Yeah, and that leads us into our third segment, which is AI winners and losers, right? There's going to be the SaaS apps that are going to struggle. They're going to do deals, right? Cursor,
Right.
With some AI models and hardware. So there's going to be some industry position. I don't think we're in consolidation yet. I think everybody's still positioning, right, to stay in position to try to rescue their business. Adobe's not going to throw in the towel quite yet.
Right.
Cursor looks for a partner. Everybody's going to try to scope out their space, and we'll pay attention to that.
Yeah.
But some of the losers that I think, the tech employees for me continue to take the brunt of the AI revolution. Right? I'm
You're
seeing
talking about the layoffs.
yeah. Some more announcements this week, right?
Yes.
Microsoft, 7% U.S. staff reduction, basically a retirement package. That
Right,
had
voluntary
this week.
retirement, I think,
Right.
voluntary
retirement, right?
Yeah.
And that's just a soft way of saying, hey, we're looking at reduction on needing programmers, and whether it's redirecting those resources to more AI specific things, or whether it's just we just don't need many programmers running. It's hard to know, but they are certainly, IBM did that in the days where they were trying to collapse, right? Where they had 170,000 employees because IBM mainframes were the dominate. Now, if you really look at it, IBM did the you're over 55, we'll give you a nice, beautiful retirement package, right?
Right.
Which,
I mean,
if you're getting older, that's not a bad thing, right? Per se.
Right. I mean, I think I think in Oracle's case, when they did the 30,000 people layoff, right? I think it was very clear why, right? Like, I mean, they needed the money for compute, right? And anyways, AI is making things productive, right? So it's those two things are going together, right? Like, hey, I don't need as many people for the same amount of work that we are doing as a company,
right?
And also, incidentally, I need the money for AI intelligence. Like, we are replacing human intelligence with AI intelligence, and AI intelligence is tokens. It's cost, right? Like, right? Like, so it's just like redirection of resources, financial resources, if you will, right? And yes, I think it is affecting people, right? So Microsoft, 8%. Facebook, I mean, Meta is what, 8,000 people this week, I believe, right?
Yeah, they announced 10%, 8,000.
8,000 across,
layoffs.
8,000,
not
right?
just early retirement, but just like, sorry,
yeah,
here's your package.
Right. So that would be another one, right? Like, so.
And this is ongoing. The Facebook, Microsoft, and others did it 6 months ago, right? So this is like a constant.
And I think Meta
evolution.
Meta said this is, and they're planning some more later this year. And what's interesting, Eric, there's another report. Apparently, they circulated an internal memo, which is saying that they are going to track the keystrokes and where people are watching on a screen, etc., to record a user's work, not user, but employee's work. And the reason is to use it for training, right? So if we figure out how to use, what workflow you're doing, we'll translate that as a workflow into an agentic workflow, basically, right? That's so obviously AI models need this training data to be able to make this happen. So that is kind of an interesting one. And as a concept, it's not new. I mean, like with robotic process automation, that's kind of the basic kernel of the idea. So now this is kind of going to a different level, actually, right? Like, so we're going to take away those jobs and we're going to learn how to do it before we let you go. Like, literally, it's a bit like that. So
yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think that there's just consolidation, and companies have to be responsible, right? They have to kind of look at the future of setting the labor force, because you take costs for when you let go of a large number of people like that. You're taking costs for a year, right? As you're planning, you're reorganizing your staff. You take the cost in the quarter, you take it, right? You write that off, but it's still an organizational change, right? So board of directors have to kind of look at and leadership of companies have to look pretty far out to figure out what they're going to do. And so this is just safety, but it's just an overriding trend, right?
Yeah, it's absolutely an overriding trend. I mean, I think we haven't even yet begun to see, the reaction from the traditional SaaS world, really, reaction slash how they are going to approach this whole thing, right? I mean, one example, honestly, it's kind of super interesting. The ServiceNow CEO, Bill McDermott, sorry, right? He's the classic sort of sales guy, and he was on a show pod with Sarah Guo. And what I really noticed in listening to the podcast was that there was a lot of posturing he was doing, right? He was using specific words, trying to position ServiceNow as the sort of overall meta layer under which all these other AI stuff sits, right? But anybody who's sort of savvy could easily see through the posturing, actually, right? And so it's a problem. I think how do we respond as a CEO of a public SaaS company? I think the question that's on top of mind is how do we respond, right? How do we, number one, communicate to the market that we are not going away, that we are relevant, right? I mean, this is the kind of stuff that, a Bill McDermott, Mark Benioff, even a Snowflake, right, has to worry about. And Frank Slootman, who was the CEO of Snowflake, was replaced with Sridhar Ramaswamy, who was much more technical, actually. And Snowflake has done much better since then. So one take I have, right, as a hypothesis here is that the world of AI, right, for the transitioning, the doula who's going to take these SaaS companies into the AI age, it needs to be a technical CEO, right, not a salesman CEO. Is the way I would sort of put it.
I would agree. I would agree with that. And that takes us to the segment 4, agentic implementations, right? Like we definitely are seeing agentic implementations happen. A couple more were announced. And the first one we'll mention is that Salesforce is announcing headless CMS for sales acceleration.
Right. Yes, absolutely. So that's a good segue. In the sense that we're talking about SaaS companies. I think absolutely, with Salesforce, they really, I think Mark Benioff is doing the right thing, right? He's embracing to the best extent possible, right, all the AI developments, and to position Salesforce in a way that it just doesn't become irrelevant, right? In as short a time span as I'm going to say 2, 3, 4 years, right? This thing is moving super fast, right? So how do I keep my relevant in an agentic economy is a top question, right? So what they have done basically by this headless CMS, I guess a easier way to understand it in AI speak would be we are going to create an MCP server out of our Salesforce instance, anybody, and accessible via MCP or CLI essentially, right? So anybody can query the whole repository within the enterprise, for example, right, or outside the enterprise with appropriate permissions. Now, this is a big unlock, actually, right? So the risk for Mark Benioff or for Salesforce is, hey, we just become a system of record that just sits within the organization. It just becomes like a database that's running in the background. Nobody needs us anymore. The risk is, hey, I can totally be replaced, so to speak, right? Humans are not using it, kind of thing. But what is the alternative? The alternative is humans are not going to log into these kind of systems anymore. That just is going to go away over time. So it's a between a rock and a hard place kind of thing.
I still think there's a valid place for sales teams, right?
Oh, of course. Yeah,
and I think therefore sales teams will take advantage of AI platforms.
Absolutely.
And so what Mark has to do is he has to reinvent Salesforce as that AI offering to sales teams, right? And it's no longer going to be just database with helping your sales team through guidance and tracking activities and content points and all that. It's going to be maybe an AI salesperson as well as AI tools to accelerate your sales team. Right?
Yeah. So the thing is, right? I don't think the salesman is going away, right? We are going to have sales folks. What is going to change, I think, is that how the sales guy is, what kind of tooling he or she is going to have at his disposal on his daily job, basically, right? And what is happening already actually, right? This is now, right? Not even in the future. Is if a sales rep does a phone call, right, like with a prospect, for example, that 30-minute call or an hour-long call is going to get recorded by Granola or some other, like, millions of other meeting recorders, right? And there are companies that take that data and are specialized in going into your Salesforce and inputting that unstructured data, which is your conversation, and taking specific things from that and putting it into structured data fields in Salesforce. Like, that's a company right there. There are companies that are doing just that, right? So there's no humans, humans will log into Salesforce, right? So anyways, this is just one aspect of how do we stay relevant kind of question that I think SaaS CEOs should be asking them. I'm sure they are.
Right. Sure.
Right. Yeah. So that's
well,
really
and I see Salesforce trying to, respond to building an agentic system that, if I build my paperclip company, right. That there's AI sales agents that are running for me to try to sell, to back to the San Francisco storefront where they gave $100,000 we talked about on a previous podcast where a research team gave $100,000, rented a store in San Francisco and let AIs, full AI run the whole store, right? And they did hire real people. The AI did the interviews and all that. And so the idea that you're going to keep doing business the same way, no. And if you're not a full AI company offering an major AI component to businesses, you're going to go to business, right? The agentic economy is going to take over. That's my 2 cents. Right?
Yes.
And he's trying to figure out how to reposition the company to get a piece of that. So instead of seeing Salesforce as sales, you're going to be your sales, your AI sales team, right? Paperclip sales, right? Whatever. So it's
I think
the agentic implementations are going to come in the industry and take that over. Last one that I kind of look at as winners and losers, right? In the agentic implementation is a legal firm. I spent some time doing some legal work the last week, and just had to file some papers on house transition titles. And let me tell you, the AIs do a fantastic job, right?
Really?
It was a legal team. I have a whole legal team. Went to the county, got all the forms, filled them out, and walked me through it. Where I would have normally had to go to a title company and spend $1,000 and have 2 or 3 meetings with them and engage with that, and then have the AI system Claude just built me a whole package, right? Edited the PDFs, I uploaded stuff, it changed the PDFs, built me draft PDFs, corrected things that I had wrong, misspellings or the way I wrote it, or things that went in the wrong positions of the form. Got the legal documents all put together in perfect format and said, this is, by the end of it, we had final draft, and AI is like, this is as good as any other legal company would have ever produced you when you package, and I'm ready to sign, notarize, and submit. And that interaction took maybe 3 hours, right? Where if I had gone to a legal team, it would have taken 3 weeks, to have like 4 different meetings, give them the and it's like, you look at the way you can interact with your legal team now. My legal team is an AI, right? Agentic implementation should give me my legal team as part of the AI, right? And then you start looking at OpenClaw and Paperclip and others that are building that company structure with that, and you're like, this is the losers are going to be lawyers. And I did hear that 10 law firms are not law firms, 10 universities are shutting down their law schools, and you can see why, right? They're like 2027, they're just not going to need them.
But Eric, I on the other hand heard this is data from the past. So I heard a crypto CEO this week talk about how they spent about $150 million in legal fees over the last 5 years in a particular sort of
the
case
crypto
that they
people
had.
haven't gotten into the AI.
No. This is 5 years worth of.
They were pre AI.
It's 5 years worth of legal fees. Yeah, but I guess now with Claude and OpenAI, it's probably much cheaper.
Yeah, probably or not.
No, it's I think even as employees or people in different professions, how do I keep myself myself relevant?
Yeah.
How do I make sure that, I use the AI tools to the best of my capability and make myself, like a 10x my productivity, so to
And
speak.
I was talking to somebody last week about this, like, how do you get time, right, to have time to spend with AI tools? And it's a delicate balance in that you have to start using AI tools to get some of your time back,
Right.
so you can use AI tools. Right, like that was like you
Yeah.
at Microsoft yesterday, and he was like, "Yeah, I really want to learn this." They were running a hackathon, and he wanted to have time to use AI in the hackathon, but he had his day job, and they weren't giving him any time off. And it's
Right.
you have to use enough AI
That's
to
right.
free up some of your time,
That's right,
so
that's
that
right.
you can learn more AI, right? And
good
so it's
point,
kind of like
good
this
point.
getting involved in it.
Virtual feedback loop, maybe
Right,
in a way.
right,
Virtual
right.
cycle.
And
Yeah.
The only thing about the summary of this week and after dark here is that the Facebook watching your keystrokes is an interesting thing, right?
Yeah,
As you're working and your employer's watching, I know they've always been able to watch like
Yeah.
your Wi-Fi connection and that kind of thing.
Yeah, but even the keyboard, even the laptop, is owned by the company, right?
Sure,
So
yeah, sure.
from an IP perspective, so to speak, there's not much you can say about it, right? I think the tricky aspect, if you
This
will,
is
is hey,
George,
yeah,
like
right.
I think that as soon as you start, you're watching your badging into your company. You're watching when you get on the Wi-Fi. Now you're watching your keystrokes, right?
Right.
All claiming that it's innocent, right?
Right.
It's all
Right.
innocent. The guy that went over to Russia, because the U.S. government was watching all internet traffic, Snowden, right? Like,
Edward Snowden.
There's
Yeah.
moments of this where they claim they have valid reasons to do it,
Right.
but then abuse can happen. Right? So
Yes,
it's kind of like,
yes.
when are unions going to come back to start protecting the worker? Is there going to be any workers, or the AI workers just going to take over? So it is fascinating to watch how these tools might be abused, right? AI governance has to come into play, and it's fascinating to watch some of this. I don't think Facebook is actually being malicious. I think they're
No, I don't think they're being malicious. Yeah, they're trying to get data, right? Like training data, right? And what better way to automate your company than by learning how your human employees are doing it?
Sure.
It's
Right.
perfect actually, right? Like as far as the thought process is concerned. But apparently there was a backlash though within the company. But yeah,
as Google ran into some backlash when they started to do some of that stuff half a year ago. Everybody gets some backlash. Change is tough for companies for sure. Change is tough on all of us. So
Right.
Interesting to watch all that play out. But other than that, I think AI was it was a good week.
Hey,
lots
great
of
week.
activity going on. So
Good.
connect. I hope you guys got to learn something, and we're going to come back twice a week to do kind of a wrap up of what's happening in Silicon Valley. Always at the end of the day, after dark.
All right. Thank you, Eric.
Thank you.
Okay. Bye.